Hello.
Hey,
Hello, Mark.
how are you?
Oh, I'm good. How are you?
Good.
It's been a day. This is my third stream today. We watched a young girl, 15 years old, be tried, convicted, and sentenced to two consecutive, concurrent life sentences for first-degree murder and attempted murder today. And the crime happened 6 months ago. In your experience, is that fast for it? And she was
That's
tried as an adult, and this was in Mississippi. And Judge Dewey K. Arthur was not having any of it.
that's lightning fast, and if it's a psychiatric case,
Yeah.
it's whatever comes after lightning fast because usually those kinds of cases take longer because you have to get medical evaluations, reports, experts. I mean, that will usually in most parts of the United States that will slow things down, and for 6 months for arrest, conviction, sentence in a psych case after trial is wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that's
It's been a day. It's my third stream of the day, so you're going to have to do all the talking, but that's okay because everyone's here to hear what you have to say.
okay.
Well, first let's to give a little synopsis of what's actually going on with the Karen Reed retrial because I was very surprised by this actually.
All right. Which one? There's a lot going on. You talking
Well,
about?
let's talk about hiring a special prosecutor to come in and not replace Lally, but just add to the team.
Never seen anything like it for what, putting aside the emotion that's attached to the case, and it's certainly a high profile case, but at its core, this is a very straightforward alleged hit and run that resulted in death, whether you believe guilt, innocence, and it is convoluted with all the stuff that you saw from the first trial, but it's not a complex case. It's not like one of these federal cases involving Trump where they have to bring in all these experts in all kinds of election law and this and that. This is what people who go to a district attorney's office who prosecute vehicular crimes and homicide cases do. And
Right.
to bring in a ringer essentially to join the team is interesting for a lot of reasons, but it also really speaks volumes about what I'm assuming the district attorney thinks about his own office and his own people. Because can you imagine working in that or being a prosecutor in that office who handles homicides and you can't handle a case like this for whatever reason? You're afraid of the limelight. You can't handle big gun attorneys on the other side, the media, the Twitter nonsense, whatever it is. It's the only other alternative I can think of is if you were trying to supplant the prior prosecutor or at least expand the team. If you had to go outside, does that maybe suggest that nobody else in the office was willing to do this? Or lack of belief in the merits of the case, the viability of the case, or the criticism that will come with it, the career suicide, which almost certainly is going to follow everyone on the prosecution team from this. Either way, though, to literally have to bring in a ringer, it's unheard of. I mean, if there was a conflict, you'd understand it.
Well, that's what I first heard when I don't know if you were texting me. Somebody was texting me like, "Did you hear they brought in somebody else to try Karen Reed on the retrial?" I'm like, "Oh, a special prosecutor." And I'm thinking to myself, "Oh, Norfolk TA must have said we have a conflict, we have to step away," because that's the only time I've ever seen that done. But instead, I go to read the article, and it's like, "Oh, Lally and his team are still going to be there. They're just bringing Hank Brennan. Is that his name?
That's his name. And
Whitey Bulger's defense attorney."
Well, that's one of the issues, which is certainly worth discussing. But the other thing, which is fascinating, is the taxpayers have to pay this, and they're going to be paying hundreds of thousands of dollars when they already pay a district attorney's office full of 50 or 60 or however many they have in Norfolk County. I don't know. The ones I'm familiar with have hundreds and hundreds, but it's not a small office. Okay. It's not, a one-stop shop in either upstate New York or rural Mississippi where the elected official is the guy. They have an office full of presumably competent and capable attorneys, and now the taxpayers are on the hook to bring in someone else who, by all accounts, is very skilled and good which I actually think is an advantage for the defense. I know people are going to look say you have two heads, but I'll explain that in a minute. They're better off having a more skilled lawyer with better cadence, moving it along, being professional, kind of making the tennis match volley more fluid. I'm telling you, this is better for these lawyers than having this bogged down process that you saw the first time. But then
when you play tennis with a better tennis player, you always play better tennis.
Yeah. I mean, in
my opinion,
it's less frustrating. There's more flow, there's more rhythm, less interruptions, just less nonsense. I mean, if this guy really is calling the shots, he has to recognize that some of the things they did in a first trial, including the charges, over the top. But the idea that they have to do this, and then it turns out that it's Whitey Bulger's lawyer, which I don't fault. That means nothing to me.
No, I know.
Me, a lawyer is a lawyer, and whether, as long as he's ethical, competent, capable, it goes for defense lawyers, prosecutors. I don't judge lawyers by their clients. Of course, people do that all the time. We're all scumbags if one of your alleged clients is. But
if you represented Harvey Weinstein, for example.
Right, exactly. As we've heard in this case, people like to use that. But, Whitey Bulger is actually, as grotesque as Harvey Weinstein almost certainly is as an individual. And Whitey Bulger was, in essence, the boss of the Irish mafia in Boston and responsible for God knows how many murders and other crimes over the course of many years. And then he disappeared for all those years when gazillions of taxpayer dollars were spent trying to locate him, all of that. He didn't deserve ultimately what happened to him, although some would disagree, but I don't condone that kind of stuff, getting shanked in a jail cell. But, putting all that aside, there is something ironic that, again, no fault of the lawyer, but we're all judged by our past experience, making all kinds of statements about the corrupt government and going after this poor, innocent, misunderstood, nice fellow from South Boston, would be the same person who potentially is going to say that, Karen Reed is the she-devil who is a murderess and should rot in prison for the rest of her life. I mean, it's just kind of for a lot of people, I think there's a disconnect in all of that and a tone deafness to a prosecutor. You can bring in whoever you want. Bring in a skilled lawyer if you want to waste the taxpayer money and do that. If you're going to do it, pick who you want. But it's got to rub a lot of people the wrong way that that's the person you would choose. You start with the police, okay? Not that many people who listen to you particularly care about the feelings of the state police involved in this case, but most lifelong cops would look negatively on the fact that the person that's coming in is someone who used to scream and yell how corrupt the government was and defend Cold Stone killers and all of that, and now tell us, like, here we go, it's all about truth, justice, and all of that kind of stuff. So that's kind of an interesting thing. You can't help but also think of the political connections here. I mean, Morrissey is a classic Massachusetts political hack. Everybody knows that. He comes from that culture where Whitey Bulger's brother used to basically, run the Massachusetts legislature for years. Billy Bulger, before he shipped off to UMass, I think, to run UMass. And, he was always claiming, I never know where my brother is all those years, and probably not true. But there's a connection there between politically Morrissey and Billy Bulger, and then he hires the lawyer and is going to use hundreds of thousands of somebody's tax dollars to have that guy's brother's lawyer act as a prosecutor. Again, I don't know Mr. Brennan. All I know is that he's supposedly a very good lawyer.
Sure, he's a fine lawyer.
That's a win-win.
Let's talk about the optics of it, like you were starting to say. Like, we got to look at optics. We got to look at appearance of, some sort of maybe not great, not impropriety, but, something that maybe some people may say nepotism. Like,
why? I mean, to me, you just can't putting aside the nepotism, even, how do you look your own people in the face and say, we're all in on this case, even though the first one was, a little bit of a fiasco, and we're changing prosecutors, and you have to read into that. I mean, you can't help but that is a vote of no confidence, clearly, in the team that tried the case. If you can even call it a team, it really was a one-man show for all intents and purposes, which is ridiculous, by the way.
Totally.
But and then you expect him to stick around and be the good soldier because we're gonna spend more tax money and have this guy come in and tell you what to do.
Yeah, now you're relegated to maybe second chair, maybe not, because basically what they're saying is we think you sucked. I mean, basically, right?
That and to go outside the office, to me, you can only come up with two conclusions. I have no confidence in anyone in the office, or there's a rebellion inside the building and nobody is willing to do it. So I, have to go outside and wave lots of dollars to get somebody to do it. And then, of course, the question is, who's running the store? If you look at the kind of various press conferences that came out here, this feels like a disaster in the making. On the one hand, you have Morrissey's statement about how much he looks forward to having him join the DA's office team, and we'll make a great team with our people. And of course, Morrissey's the political one here. He's the one who's going to suffer politically, and already has by hiring this guy. But then you have Brennan's statement, which essentially says the buck stops here. I'm in charge. I will do this fairly. And of course, when you start making statements like that, how does the new boss already feel? Why do you have to give a statement and the first words you say are, we're going to do this fairly and make sure she gets a fair trial? Isn't that a given?
Right.
Why do you need to do that unless you recognize everybody thinks that, there's shenanigans that have occurred in the past and there's no credibility in this process? And so you have to wonder who is in charge here? What if there is a disagreement about the merits of the prosecution? Does Morrissey, I assume he does, have the ability to say, I don't care what you think, I'm saying get in there and go forward? And what if this guy doesn't want to do it over a murder charge, for example, or over any of this? I mean, what happens if he, looks under the kimono of the case and decides this stinks? I mean, is he, what happens when he says, I'm not using Michael Proctor. I'm not using some of these other cops. I don't believe this. I don't believe that. What kind of relationship is this guy going to have, not only with the state police, but the other witnesses for the prosecution? Do they feel like, there's no relationship there? I mean, Lally was kind of their guy, right?
Right. Pawn.
He didn't challenge. He clocked in, he clocked out. It was time to make the donuts. It was time to make the donuts. You get up on Monday and you go do what you need to do, caffeinate, do your thing.
So do you think that Lally was like, I don't want to be involved in this anymore? Do you think Lally's going to resign? Do you think, because you said maybe nobody else in the office wants to step up. Do you think that Lally was like, I'm not doing this again? And
I don't know.
Maybe he's going to resign? Because it's kind of emasculating to take the case away from him. It's a little bit emasculating as an attorney, don't you think?
Trial lawyers, as you know, there is ego. It's just one of those things. And he just prosecuted, what essentially amounts to the most high-profile case in the country at the moment. It's certainly been big in the news. It's still big in the news. It's going to remain for God knows how long going forward. And you just got jettisoned. So, that's now, if he said, I'll stick around, but I don't want to be the guy. If that's his attitude, that tells you he was never the right guy, which will not shock many people, to ever try it in the first instance. Because you need, if you're going to be a trial lawyer in a case like this as a prosecutor, even though you have to be ethical, fair, and honest, you do need a killer instinct. I mean, you need to have a passion. Let's be honest, he clearly lacks. So if he stays on the team and just says, hey, I'm happy to hold Brendan's bag and just kind of go along for the ride, maybe he will. I don't know. Or maybe he's got other stuff to do. To me, it's a sign that you have no future there. And most people would leave especially in a political office, that office is so political. I mean, he's donated money. We saw this before to Morrissey over the years, like the rest of them. And what did that got him, humiliated at a first trial, and then one could argue humiliated even more after the trial.
Yeah, I mean, once you're in first class, it's hard to go back to coach, right? How do you all of a sudden go to being like the water boy? I mean, it's embarrassing for him, and I hope maybe he moves on and becomes the defense attorney, because so many prosecutors become defense attorneys, yourself included, Alan Jackson included. So my question to you is, how often do they hire a current defense attorney to step in as a special prosecutor? Like, how easy is it for you to now put on another hat when you've already flipped over to the other side?
Well, in these circumstances, hiring again, this is not my colloquial word, but I mean, it's the mob lawyer. I mean, even by the way we all get judged and get criticized and called this, there are different levels of criticism. Defense lawyer is bad enough, right? Mob lawyer is a whole nother level of derogatory. Okay. So when somebody's called a mob lawyer, that's not the image that you want. You may represent clients who are associated with that, but from a lawyer's perspective, if you get big clients like that, the belief is, well, you must be good at it. So that it's actually, I mean, again,
Sam Cutler.
Bruce Cutler. Yeah. Bruce.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Bruce Cutler. Sam Cutler's a
those
different guy.
Are all those guys. But they were known as mob lawyers, and that was not a compliment. So for a district attorney to retry a woman in a case like this and go outside the office, not recuse himself, and brings in a defense lawyer who also happens to be a mob lawyer and also happens to be associated with the family of, someone I used to know politically back in the day, this just reeks of just like classic, typical masshole politics. And I mean, it's just the whole area has been embarrassed by this whole process on TV and with all the stereotypes and imaging. And then you think this is like too much Boston. Then you tap Whitey Bulger basically to come in and save the day.
Especially it's ironic. I mean, isn't it ironic, that so many people have been equating this entire prosecution and this entire third-party culprit and this whole culture of all these related people to being some sort of an organized crime syndicate. And then you actually, as the district attorney, go out and hire an actual organized crime defense attorney. It's like you couldn't make this up.
But the thing is, here's a guy, and again, I don't fault him for this because it was his job, and I assume he did it well, even though Whitey Bulger got life in prison. That's not the lawyer's fault. Those cases are virtually impossible to win. But my point is, he was very aggressive about government corruption and scummy FBI agents and scummy witnesses and people who cover up things and lie. Now, if you take that in good faith and say, bring that experience and cynicism, if you will, or skepticism into this case. And now let's look at the police officer in this case. Let's look at the cops, the state police. Look at the civilian witnesses for the prosecution in this case. Look at, some of the alleged corruption and weird things that have been going on. You'd hope that he's going to follow that through in the way that he would if he were private counsel. I mean, you hope he's not like a shapeshifter and just comes in and says, well, I'm getting paid by these guys, so I'll just, now I'll just say whatever.
Now police corruption doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think, it is interesting to me though, how, oh my God, this is a big deal. And the defense is, I mean, they probably will never admit this. And I don't know why they would talk about it anyway. But real lawyers, they want a real lawyer on the other side. It's actually better. It is. For a couple of reasons. They're going to understand what they're trying to argue. They're going to sift through the BS, trim the case down, keep the cadence and rhythm going. And it also makes you lift your game, and everyone becomes more focused. I mean, the problem with the first trial is there's a tendency, as I may have done even in person, is take a nap. That won't happen. That won't happen this time around.
No. Well, no, it'll be a good
30 seconds.
I mean, tennis match, maybe. My
Yeah.
second thought upon hearing this news was, well, first that they had a conflict, and so they had to hire a special prosecutor. I was wrong there. But my second thought was maybe they want to bring in somebody else so that it gives them the opportunity to then drop two of the charges. And, perhaps Marcy didn't want that being on his head. He didn't want to be the one to do it. So he wants to bring in, this impartial third party to come in and do it. What are your thoughts on that? As Amy in Boston says, can Brennan come in and say we aren't retrying?
Well, that's
My question
unclear.
is more like, is that why they brought him in?
So the answer to the question on the screen is we don't know, because Morrissey is saying I'm in charge essentially, and I'm glad to have this guy on our team. And the other guy is saying, I'm the shot caller. I will do this fairly, properly, and I'll go where it takes us. And I'm telling you that they're at least in the. Why didn't they issue a joint release? See, I don't understand this. And this is, again, the lack of self-awareness. Obviously, this is something that was planned for a long period of time. This didn't happen overnight, okay? It probably happened where they said, oh my God, I think we have to retry this case, but we can't with this current permutation of the trial team. So get us someone. You'd have to think that if he's joining the team, why not put out a joint unified press release with comments by Morrissey, comments by Brennan, put it together, make sure everyone signs off, make it look organized. But I don't think the statements look at all together. I mean, one of them is the DA saying, I'm glad to have him on my team with my people. And the other one is saying, I'm making all the decisions. Essentially, I'm paraphrasing. Right. I'm making the decisions here. And then the question becomes, what happens if Brennan says this case sucks and I don't want to do this? That's no skin off of his nose. He'll make a few bucks and he'll walk away and go back to whatever. That would be political death for Morrissey, right? I mean, we brought in a real lawyer outside the office, and they think what every other real lawyer who's looked at this case has said. This case stinks and shouldn't be prosecuted. Right. And I'm spending taxpayer dollars for the privilege. So politically, you can't win, because if Karen Reed gets convicted, which I don't think will ever happen, but if she did, well, your office couldn't do it because you have incompetent or unwilling people. You had to pay for a ringer, which is not effective use of tax money. If she's acquitted, then people are going to say, you used my tax money, you brought in a ringer because your people stink, and she walked. So how does he politically win here?
It is a no-win. It's a no-win.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Got two cute.
What were you, I didn't hear what you said.
I just said he screwed the pooch. I mean, they're in the middle, and politically, I don't see how he ever gets credit for doing the right thing here, which I'm not saying he deserves, by the way. Right. But at some point, the FOIL requests are going to go out. Where is the agreement, the employment agreement? That's a public record. How much is he being paid, and what are the terms? Those are going to be public records. Are there any conditions in terms of who has the power to do what? I would think that would be in the agreement. I mean, first of all, if they offered me money to come there, I would never take it. But if somebody wants to do that, a guy like this who has a real practice and a real reputation, he's going to be worried. He's not going to be a zombie prosecutor that we always talk about. Big difference. He's going to say, I don't want to make an ass out of myself. I want to be credible and do what's right, presumably. And in order for him to be able to guarantee that he's going to do that, he needs the power to call the shots. And it's not clear. And what some of the people in the media should be asking him is, who's calling the shots? I mean, so if there's any reporters listening, the proper question is to say, who's in charge? Who decides? What witnesses are called? Who decides what charges? Who decides whether this case has any merit? Who decides whether Michael Proctor is going to be a witness? Who decides all of these things? Who decides if there was a disagreement between a Brady violation? Do I have the power to disclose to the defense that, Morrissey's office suppressed evidence? Do I have that authority, or do I not?
I'm seeing some potential headaches, not to mention that if you're a highly successful defense attorney that's representing guys like Whitey Bulger, you're not going to take a pay cut to come and work for the DEA's office. right?
No,
So what's
gonna
the
get paid
retainer
a
agreement?
lot.
It's got to be worth it financially.
It's got to be worth it, and it's got to protect your credibility. And of course, as we said a few minutes ago, but lawyers have egos. It's just a reality of this business. And if you're a lawyer and somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, I got a great case for you. You want to prosecute the Karen Reed case? Now, prosecute her is, I think, a disaster, and you might want to think twice about that. But if you like big cases, if you want to get involved, you want to make a lot of money, and you want to keep your reputation, then I could see the allure for somebody like this to say, I'm going to get involved in this. And if I have the power to dismiss it anyway, then I'll be the king of this. I'll be the hero, which again is putting. So Morrissey's politically already lost because they look so weak. They look like they've surrendered and had to just bring in, I hate to call it anything other than bringing in a ringer.
Yeah. Yeah. And now somebody has announced that she's going to run against him. So he's going to have a running opposing
Two of them.
two people.
There's
two people?
There's two. But I will tell you this. And of course, one thing Morrissey is he's a political player. I mean, so he knows how elections and campaigns and raising money work. At some point in the next few months, somebody has to emerge to challenge him, and it's got to be one. Because if you fragment the opposition, he's going to get his core percent, whatever it is, that are going to put him over the top if the other two split. You know what I'm saying? So and I don't know who that is. I know it's some woman I'd never heard of and some man I've never heard of, and I have no idea who's who or what's what. I'd be curious if I lived there to hear from them. But, at some point, you have to pick one. And it's funny because I always talk about, this is so similar to what happened in Brooklyn about 10 years ago. I mean, it's uncanny how Norfolk County is just mirroring what happened in Brooklyn. And one of the things after the corruption allegations and terrible cases is you had a lot of people who said, all right, I'm going to be DA. And some of them ran, and you could realize Hines is never going to lose unless somebody emerges. And eventually Ken Thompson emerged, and the other ones kind of supported him, whether they wanted to or not. And then, Thompson ended up blowing Hines out of the water, and then in a terrible thing, died a year later from brain cancer. I mean, it's crazy. But that's what has to happen here. Eventually, somebody has to become the opposition. And then at that point, they get donations and whatnot. And I think that there's a good chance that Morrissey is politically damaged. And I guess my point is he's already damaged himself in this case, no matter what the outcome is, by sending up the bat signal and calling in a ringer and paying them your tax money for the privilege when he already gets a lot of your tax money. And another question the journalist should ask him is, do you lack confidence in your assistants?
In your own office.
And when he gives you the cliche, no, then say, then, sir, why did you go outside the office and spend additional tax money for that privilege? Is there no one else that could have done this? And what's he going to say? Because then when he says there are people, then why not? Did they decline? Are there problems? Is there I mean, there's so much here for the media to grab.
Right. And why don't you try the case, Mr. Morrissey? Just like your friend, Michael Daugherty, is trying the Boulder mass shooting case right now. He's the DA of Boulder County. He's trying it himself.
It's a rare thing. I mean, when you're a DA of a large office, it's pretty rare to actually do anything like in the courtroom. I mean,
like lawyering.
Well, in the old days when in the DA's office,
cases.
The famous Robert Morgenthau, right, who was, when I was at the DA's office, was the boss, and they literally called him the boss, and he was DA for 100 years. And prior to that, he was the U.S. attorney in the Southern District for John Kennedy. But how many cases did he ever try in his life?
The goose egg.
He was a brilliant figurehead DA and politician and lead guy, but he was never the trial lawyer. Something tells me, and maybe it's a little naive, I don't think so, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say Morrissey ain't the trial lawyer. That's just a guess,
Yeah,
but
I think that's the answer right there.
yeah.
Cash Money Cass wants to know, is it possible a RICO could be coming? A win-win for Canton, mix in the bad cops with Karen to earn back favor.
Who knows? I mean, none of us know what's coming or not coming. But everybody gets all excited about RICO, and you think of the mob, and do they ever use it outside the mob? And then comes the Sean Combs down the street,
Oh
which
my,
has RICO. I know that's a whole other conversation,
P.
but
Diddy. We could
I
do
mean,
days.
they did indict his bad boy empire, or whatever the hell he calls his businesses, as a corrupt organization. So they did do that. I mean, but I don't know what's going to happen here. We don't know.
Amory wants to know, what does this mean? What does this mean? Will they change the way the case was presented the first time, or do they have to stay with the same thing? By thing, you mean like theory of the case?
Well, they're stuck by, the indictments. They're stuck by a bill of particulars. I mean, you can't change theories literally, but you can tweak evidence and witnesses. But so here's the thing. I mean, if this guy comes in and truly has the power, he's going to do what any real lawyer would do. Any real lawyer is going to say, like, Trooper Paul, you're out. Like, don't ever come back. No disrespect.
Oh,
The other thing a real lawyer would do is say, can somebody get me a real reconstruction witness? Do they exist? In other words, to challenge what the ARCA people say. I mean, a real lawyer is going to say, I can't go forward unless somebody finds me a real credible witness who can string 3 sentences together and sound articulate and explain why those guys are wrong. You
mean somebody who knows what velocity is?
All that stuff. I think a real lawyer would also say, let's not play any more games about, how long to die in the cold, 227 or 630. Somebody go get me a credentialed forensic expert and answer the question definitively. Was this search made at 227 or 630, or is the answer, we have no idea? Okay. Because the stuff you heard, frankly, from both sides at the trial, it was like kind of a bunch of mush.
It wasn't clear. It was never clear to me.
I'll tell you this: if somebody were to come back who's a really heavy expert and says it was 227, then a real lawyer is going to say, adios, like, we're done here. I'm not doing it. Another real lawyer would come in and say, what's the deal with this Guarino guy? Seriously, like, he missed, forget the Google search. Why did he miss all the Jennifer McCabe other stuff? Why did he miss the Birchmore stuff? See, I'd be concerned about that. Because, he's the guy who's going to say that John O'Keefe never went in the house and all that. So is this guy legitimate or not? A real lawyer is going to come in and say, this is another problem with Lally. Okay. To me, and I said this months ago to other people when this came out, when a retrial was first possibility, forget for a moment whether Lally should be retrying the case or not. How do we know he's not a viable defense witness in this case, depending on what he did or did not do? I'm not throwing darts with the inverted video, but I find it very hard to believe that a seasoned prosecutor had no clue after 2.5 years of a case revolving around a broken taillight in a Sally port that he didn't realize I'm looking at a backwards video. I mean, that strikes me as just...
that video just revealed itself during the trial.
So a real lawyer like Brennan should be coming in and saying, what's the deal with the inverted video? Get me Lally. I need to interview you. I don't just accept you as my partner. I need to know when did you learn about this and how did you come across this? Get me Buchanan. What the hell was that testimony about the video? And then you forgot that you had identified yourself and Proctor in that video a day later. So these are all questions that a real lawyer would say, I need answered before. I think a real lawyer would also say, can somebody explain to me, are we seriously buying the witnesses that are telling us that taillight pieces were found day after day after day? I mean, because the problem is a guy like Brennan, who's going to be cynical like me as a defense lawyer, is going to say at first blush, I don't believe that. There's no way, I'm telling you right now, there's no way at first blush that guy who's been in defense private practice, cross-examining cops, not all of them good, not all of them bad, for a second believes that evidence revealed itself in the melting snow over the course of 2 weeks. Nobody believes that. No one is going to believe about the butt dials between Higgins and Albert and all of that stuff. So if
he probably knows about chain of custody and, evidence logs and, logs of people coming on the scene and who's coming and going, and probably knows all that kind of stuff too.
If he was trying the case from the defense side, okay, he would do what I would do, what they did, and what he would have done, which is absolutely destroy the cops for this fiasco of leaf blowers, solo cups, stop and shop bags, and unopened or unwatched evidence in a sally port near whatever. A real lawyer is going to ask other really difficult questions, which is, why were we telling the world that there was broken glass on the bumper that was consistent or matched the glass that John O'Keefe was holding? Because if that were true, that would be some degree of pretty significant evidence. So a real lawyer is going to come in and say, how the hell did we not know that, or present a cogent theory or explanation for that for 2 years? And then you find out the glass didn't match. Well, what does that mean? How did that glass get there, other than the same way some would say the taillight got on the lawn in 45 pieces? It doesn't really make much sense. I mean, a real lawyer is going to ask, why the hell did John O'Keefe have a DNA mixture in containing his blood, and the DNA, possibly blood, I don't remember the exact testimony, of 2 other unknown people? That may not be conclusive proof that destroys your case, but a real lawyer who's being honest to the process, and as he said in his press release, says, I'm going to get her a fair trial and we're going to do this the right way. A real lawyer wants to know, well, what the hell is that all about? Like, how did that happen? Why is there vomit there? Okay. A real lawyer is
Where's the blood?
A real lawyer is going to say, again, this is not conclusive proof, but it's going to be skeptical about, well, wait a minute. You mean right after this happened, Brian Albert resigned, never went back to work, sold the house that was in the family for all those years. Work was done on the floor or whatever was reported about that. They got rid of the dog. I'm not even getting into the injuries with the dog. That's a whole nother, but they got rid of the dog, all these. I mean, a real lawyer is going to say, well, that's kind of weird. And then they're going to say, why are they sending all these weird text messages? Doesn't mean they killed anyone, but it's weird. It doesn't make sense.
Of course. Why? I don't know why the jury didn't get it. Did you see the Canton police audit meeting that explains everything? I just want to play a clip for anyone who hasn't seen this.
Yeah. Hold on. Quick,
let's go ahead.
I'll just say, before you finish that point, if this guy has authority to manage his case in the way that he sees fit and is asking the questions that we're talking about now and has concerns, the real question is, does he then turn around and say, I'm out of here? Because if he does that, that's the end of Morrissey. So is he beholden in some way? I don't know. But these are the questions the media should be asking. Who's making decisions here?
Has he done a press conference? I don't think he's done a press conference, has he?
Well, the only press conference I'm familiar with Morrissey doing was in the summer of 2023, when he did that hostage video that was completely inappropriate.
That wasn't even a press conference. That was a pre-recorded video that he just released on the internet. I thought I was meaning Brennan. Has Brennan done a press conference since he took
No, I just saw his release. I just saw his release, which was, again, on the surface appeared appropriate on the surface.
Just a statement.
But when Morrissey's making his own statement and these questions that are unanswered, this seems like a mess to me.
Here's something from last night. Just a quick little clip, 35 seconds.
Ms. Holly.
It's Kathleen.
Ms. Holly, we'll just the solo cup and the snowblower. What is it about that? It keeps coming up at these meetings.
It made us a national laughingstock.
How?
Because then, if I have to explain that, then let's just move on.
Well, please do, because quite frankly, you could also be looked as ingenious to collect evidence that was ready to melt
in
away.
Beer cups. The blood of a fallen police officer collected in beer cups.
How is that a problem?
Because they're not sterile, because they don't have a top, because they were put in a used Stop and Shop.
I'm not,
excuse me, sir, I'm still speaking.
Ms. Holly.
It's
And
Kathleen.
that was that was from last night. Thanks to Young Turks for posting this so we could.
You know, it's funny because we said this months ago when Court TV and Law and Crime, I think, you know, all these networks were broadcasting the trial, how Massachusetts is making a laughingstock out of itself and everything with this case, right down to the mass hole stereotypes that we saw during the trial, right down to, you know, everybody wants to have white claws and all the just, you know, even all this stuff that we saw about the inability to properly secure a crime scene and voucher evidence and butt dials. And you just said, this is such a disaster. And now with the benefit of time, reflection, you know, by presumably learned public servant officials are attacking a resident, a very outspoken resident, as we know, and that's okay, saying literally it is ingenious that they secured the blood of a man who was deceased on the lawn by scooping it with an unsterile red Solo cup, scooping it with snow, and then standing there, not putting a cap on it or anything, putting it in a unsterile Stop and Shop bag, transporting it in that unsterile way, which is also putting it in other weather conditions in a car. Now the heat, you know, it's cold out there. They're blasting the heat in the car. And then you later on find that this evidence was just lying around a Sallyport where the car was, where the defense alleges that the taillight was diddled with improperly. And the blood
Did
is
you have
just,
to say diddled with?
it's just sitting there. And this guy has the gall on this, knowing this is being publicly televised and is going to get broadcast, to say, not only like, gee, you know, I think we're making too much of a big deal out of it, or enough, we've heard this, or not even, well, you know, they did the best they could under the situation and the stress. No, this guy went all in and said, I'm going to see you're crazy and say, this was brilliant. This was ingenious. This was the way it should be done, which is in essence what he's saying. And it just, once again, congratulations, residents of Canton.
Well done.
You have been
Well done.
exposed as an absolute laughingstock across the country. Just like Rita said, you know, we've become a national laughingstock. And after she said that, it increased exponentially, because that's crazy. There were so many other ways the guy could have handled that other than fighting with her and saying, well, no, this is brilliant. I mean, that to me sounds like just ignorant gaslighting more than anything else. Yeah.
People are saying also that Jen McCabe's lawyer, Reddington, represented Whitey's girlfriend. Yeah.
I know. I mean,
I think that's what Jerry was getting at here. Thanks, Jerry.
Yeah, he did. I'm pretty sure he represented her girlfriend, which means it's virtually impossible that they wouldn't have had some interaction. I'm not going to sit here and say that Kevin has done or would do anything wrong. I like him, even though we have different views of a lot of the individuals in this thing. I don't know what's going on. Do I think that that's potentially, and this has nothing to do with him. He didn't do anything. He represents a client. This is Morrissey again. This is actually a very good point. You're being accused of being too comfortable with all these people. And there's this feeling that this is an incestuous environment. And people are going to wonder about it. Is that a factor here? Is it create a comfort zone? I don't know. But of all the people to hire, it's just a bizarre choice for that reason. 20th Century Fox says the same thing. Jen McCabe's attorney, also representing. Listen, also, you know, like, it's a small pond. You know, there's, you know, when you're at a level of being an attorney, it's a small pond. You're going to meet the same people over and over again. It's not that uncommon, I think, for lawyers to work together. And I mean, I'm sure you've had the same adversary a number of times, just like we all have, because everybody's got a lot of cases and you're always going to meet the same people. And so, I mean, as a civil litigator, a lot of my best friends are defense attorneys because those are the people I'm up against, right? And even when you get, you know, multi-defending cases of a certain type, it's like the same cast of character lawyers and who's in it, and just, it is what it is. Not uncommon. But again, and that's no fault of the two lawyers. The question is politically, how does Morrissey not see that attack coming? And
It's optics.
The optics of all of it. I've said this a million times too.
I know.
Whatever common sense says he should do, he seems to go the other direction. When you should go left, he seems to go right. When you should go right, he seems to go left. If you had to bring in a ringer for this, there had to be someone way removed from this whole thing that you could have found, or you might say, well, maybe he couldn't. I don't know. But
is it common to bring in a defense attorney instead of another prosecutor from another part of the state?
No, but even more no, and this is important. If he was recusing himself, they probably would seek to have another DA's office potentially deal with it. Potentially. What makes this so screwed up is he's not recusing himself. He is literally taking tax money and bringing in a ringer.
Another guy, yeah.
This is unique.
Very. Cynthia,
Yeah.
thanks for the 10. Adam Lally's resignation, thanks for the 10. And your name may be more real, come true sooner than you think. Before we move on to the next topic, which will probably be the appeal, Romy says, I get Brennan's a great attorney, but how's he possibly going to be able to remedy all the issues that still exist in the case? I think we just kind of addressed that, unless there's something else you want to say.
Just only that I think you're jumping the gun and saying, how's he going to remedy it? What you would hope is that a real lawyer with experience and a healthy dose of skepticism and a history of recognizing what he perceives to be official corruption would look at this and ask these difficult questions that we already talked about before saying, well, how am I going to fix this? If he comes in and his first thought is, how am I going to fix this? Then the whole thing is just corrupt from the jump.
Yes. Yes.
It needs a reevaluation from top to bottom.
Yeah. And is that going to, well, we'll talk about the appeal in a second, what that's going to do to the trial. Thanks, Diane, for gifting 5 memberships, and to Dark Willow for gifting a membership, and to those of you who are randomly selected, that congratulations. Scott McGinnis, hello. Bederow and Bradle in Massachusetts, Dream Team Killabees.
Yeah. Next week. Yeah.
Next week, you're going to be there?
Yeah.
Live and in person.
Live and in person.
Go get your pictures. No, don't.
It's just a garden variety court appearance, but I'm sure it'll be interesting. It always is.
Thank you, Dark Willow, for saying we're always raising the bar. Yes, he did say, how is that a problem? AJ, nice to see you again. You've been here with me all day. Intolerance says, the Commonwealth never had the evidence to prosecute Karen Reed, so they spent the entire trial defending the McAlberts. Maybe they think they need a mob lawyer to get the job done.
Again, I don't fault the lawyer, but these are the kinds of things that how Morrissey would not perceive that that's how people are going to think. And I don't think it's crazy to think that. I mean, based on some of the things you've seen. And so he's made this politically a bigger mess than it was even a week ago, which is really hard to do. I mean, it's quite impressive, really.
It really is. Like, would you have guessed this a week ago? That
No. I would not have guessed that Whitey Bulger's lawyer would be summoned from the bullpen to come in and join the team at taxpayer expense. No.
Michael Donahue says, you don't think she'll be convicted on manslaughter? Seems like the last jury was close to convict on that charge. Thanks for the 5.
They were missing 3 or 4, and that's actually quite a lot of people to turn based on what the evidence was at the first case and how much worse it already will be at the second case, given you're probably not going to see Proctor. You have other damaged state police troopers. You have the defense ability to tweak the case a little bit. You could go on and on. So I don't. I mean, I think.
Good.
I'm just going to say, I mean, I think it's surprising that they got 8 or 9, whatever the final number was. But I don't look at that as, oh my God, she almost got convicted. I would say, wow, they hit their high water mark at 8 or 9. How are they? I mean, if this was like 11-1 with one hanging by a thread, I'd say, yeah, that's peril.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think there's going to be 12 rational people from Norfolk County. And yes, to our favorite ex-FBI agent, it will be in Norfolk County. The DA cannot move the trial. Okay? You know that.
The DA is not changing venue on this.
They can't, and they wouldn't anyway. So stop by the way, she wants to move it to Boston, which is about
Right, because no one in Boston has ever heard of the Karen Reed case.
It's about a 2-minute drive actually from Dedham to cross into the city limits. So, but no, I don't think 12 people are ever going to unanimously convict her of anything. That doesn't change because they have a better lawyer prosecuting. The real winners here are going to be the people watching if there is a retrial, because it will be a more interesting trial to watch.
Yeah. But
it's always good to see skilled advocates going back and forth.
It's like better tennis. It's like the US Open finals. When once you lose Proctor, Buchanan, Tully, because who knows what's going to happen with their internal affairs investigations, and you're also going to lose Trooper Paul because there's no way they can call. Who do they have left?
Well, they have Guarino, assuming he.
Trooper Reno, maybe.
I mean, look, there is a report that I've seen and others have seen, and it's going to be an issue at her retrial, and I'm sure some other cases that involve phone extractions to people associated with this a little bit. Where there's a report from August 21 where Fanning said that Guarino extracted both phones from Farwell, personal and cell. And I looked at the report, meaning Fanning now, and he said there were 0 communications. Now, we know they got them from another way and whatever.
Right.
But the report from the state police says Guarino extracted both and Fanning saw 0. Now, you could argue maybe Fanning is fudging it. Maybe, I don't know. But what I know is if there were 32,000 and he saw 0, it's kind of a bad thing for if that's one of your key witnesses at a retrial.
He also said Farwell told me that, he wiped his phone. That was the last sentence of that report. Right. And now we're also finding out that that Fanning's internal affairs investigation was closed without merit, or whatever their lingo is, because apparently he was on vacation when Proctor sent those messages to the group about looking for nudes, and he never saw them. But if he did see them, he would have definitely reprimanded Proctor. So that's why he was, so there's that.
I guess that doesn't work for the other guys when at least one of them sent the ha in response and the thumbs up I guess you lose that ability to say I didn't see it. So
right, once you put the heart on it, and maybe he has delivered turned off on his phone. So there's that. Debbie says, don't forget that Gallagher said the taillight shattered when the police department mechanic removed it from the Lexus. I do remember that testimony.
Yeah, that's kind of a lost thing and all. I do remember that. And it's, I don't know how that's going to factor in, but that is kind of a lost point.
Yeah, it should have been hammered more, but.
Yeah. How did it shatter if it was already on the lawn where it was revealing itself over the course?
Right.
3 weeks later.
There wouldn't have been anything left to break. Adam Lally's resignation's paperwork is inevitable. You're welcome.
Who knows?
So, moving on now to the appeal.
Yeah.
We heard some news on the appeal today. Why don't you break the news to everyone who hasn't heard it?
Well, I mean, it went to the full court. So these, Massachusetts has this really unique, I say unique because I'm not used to it. Maybe other states do it too, but where they get a lot of cases to the highest court in the state, but it invariably ends up in front of one judge. Of course, and if that one judge decides it, will control the litigation that they're ruling on, but it has much less precedential value, obviously, than an opinion of the full court saying this is what we find. And so, without getting into the legal weeds, the single justice who was going to hear this had the power to and did say, we're kicking this to the whole court, which is just a way of saying this is important. This ought to be considered by the whole court, which now makes this an opportunity. And this is what, to me, is the most interesting thing. A full court opinion from the highest court in the state becomes the law of the state, bar none, other than unless, the U.S. Supreme Court or some federal court, which a lower federal court probably wouldn't do, gets involved in some other kind of situation. So the question is, if the full court's going to issue a decision, they have an opportunity to say whatever their ruling in this case is, How do we make sure that something like this never happens again? Because this is ridiculous. I mean, you have, in essence, all the jurors saying we absolutely acquitted. We have a judge who said, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to listen to this.
I'm tired.
You have a DA who says, even though we don't dispute that they acquitted, they didn't publish it because that's what you have to do. And we have nobody saying, well, I don't know, shouldn't we kind of find out maybe why they didn't? And maybe that will one way or the other answer the question. So to me, this is an opportunity for the high court in Massachusetts to say, this is what you need to do. And then the question, of course, becomes, was it done wrong here? And how are they going to remedy it? I mean, if they deny it, then it's over. And that's the end. The thing that's crazy here to me is if Karen Reed wins in the current proceeding in front of the high court, a win is going to be a remand to
Beverly Canoni,
ordering her to do a hearing in
Right.
and that would, in English, would mean bring in the jurors and let's confirm, did they, in their minds, acquit? Was it a final decision? Because that's another part of this, it has to be final. And then to me, the money question is, well, why didn't they publish it? Like, take the DA at face value, which, I mean, their argument's not a terrible one. Most juries, when they say not guilty or acquit, say not guilty. They didn't. I mean, that is a fact. They didn't say that. So why not?
Well, they were told not to fill out any of the papers until they reached a consensus on all of the charges.
And I think that's why there has to be a hearing. And then if there is a hearing, Judge Canone would decide again, assuming she has the hearing and is not a witness, which is an issue I raised months ago too. But assuming she isn't, she would have to issue a new ruling after taking the fact-finding evidence, at which point, you know what that means. The party that doesn't like that might say, well, wait a minute, I'm going back to a single justice and appealing the hearing ruling. Now, if the DA were to lose in the SJC, I think that is an opening for them to say, we're done with the murder charge. They can't be this obtuse. Like, they can't. But it's already almost October. And there is a chance that this ping pong up and down with the high court remanding to the lower court, it's not inconceivable that could screw up the trial schedule.
Well, they've set a briefing schedule, I think yesterday, and it says here, I'm looking at the briefing schedule, that the defendant's principal brief shall be filed no later than the 25th, which is 5 days from today. I think they pretty much did already file the brief. I went over it.
Yeah.
Then the Commonwealth's brief shall be filed no later than October 16th. And then if there's a reply brief, that the deadline on that is October 25. And it says enlargements of time should not be anticipated. Oral argument shall take place in November 2024 or such other time as the court may order. And, you know, here's the thing. We all know what happens between Thanksgiving and New Year's. Like, the courts aren't really in session.
No.
Judges don't like to work.
It also,
how long is it going to take to render a decision? You've got a full panel now. And I don't know how many judges are on this panel, whether it's 6 or 7. I'm not sure.
But even if they decide and they rule in favor of the prosecution, then fine, it's done. Like that's it.
Right.
But if they send it back for a hearing, there's no way this case is getting tried in January. Now,
but they also don't rule from the bench. You know, if they're going to hear oral arguments, October 25th for the reply brief. Then, and remember, this is like the record on appeal. It's huge, right? So all of these judges on the panel have to digest this, because when they go in for oral arguments, these judges are fully briefed, as it were.
Oh, yeah,
they've got to read it. They've got to digest it. They've got to know it like the back of their hand, because these are like really, really smart. This is where the really, really smart lawyers go. They become appellate judges.
Yeah.
So that takes time, and they don't rule from the bench. They have to issue a written decision. It takes time.
Yeah, and they're going to have to issue a very detailed written decision, because I think all would agree, putting aside how everyone feels about the individuals in this case, that the idea that somebody may have been factually acquitted but for whatever reason, the verdict wasn't published, could result in an acquitted defendant being retried and potentially convicted at a retrial is a problem, putting aside your feelings for the people in this case. And I'm
Yes.
sure that the court is going to want to make sure to lay out, here's how you don't do this. Okay. When you have a multi-count case like this, or Massachusetts lingo, multiple indictments, they do it different. Not a multi-count indictment. They have multiple indictments, I guess. And some of those indictments have lesser included offenses, and the jury comes back and says, we're hung. It ought to be pretty basic that, never mind, did the defense object? The judge is the ultimately one who they often call a justice. They are the one that has to make sure justice is done. And I would imagine whatever the ruling is, that they want to make it clear that, for the love of God, is it okay that we have every trial judge in these instances say, is that on everything or just one, or what are we talking about?
Right. And that's why I think they're agreeing to send this to the whole panel. This is not just about Karen Reed. This is about double jeopardy in the state of Massachusetts.
Exactly correct. This is much bigger than her on this point. But of course, as the litigant, ultimately, it's going to affect her. But yeah, it goes beyond that.
I love it when you say that I'm right, because it makes me feel really smart, because you're so much smarter than I am. Yuri's math teacher, thank you for gifting 10 memberships. You are so very kind and generous and the best. We love you, Yuri's math teacher. Next topic is, what else we got to talk about tonight? Let's see if there's any questions here. Are we going to get an answer before January? I don't know. Like I said, January 25th is the alleged retrial date. I don't know.
It's also, don't forget, you're going to
7 judges.
These parties are going to be fighting a two-front war. I mean, at the same time you're dealing with, the SJC and appellate work, you're prepping for retrial, and that takes a ton of time, a lot of stress. I mean, obviously the defense brought in, Martin Weinberg and I think a couple other people to work with him. And that's what he does while the trial lawyers are potentially prepping. Presumably, what's his name? Brennan. His name is Brennan, right? Hank Brennan. Yeah. Would be, it's concerning that, again, to go back to his press conference, his first word was, I'm going to be ready for a retrial in January. I think it would have been better to say, I need to reevaluate to see where we're going here. But
how about I need to review the entire case?
Right, whatever. But he'll be dealing with, preparing for retrial, apparently. I mean, I take him at face value. And I guess their appeals people will work on this other thing, which I assume would be, there was a new name we heard, Caleb somebody, who I assume is from their appeals bureau. I don't think, once you get to the high court in the state.
Yeah, that's a special skill.
You're going to the appellate lawyers. Yeah. No, and this is not even meant to be disrespectful.
No.
People like Lally and whatever, but they bring
different skill set.
It's a different skill set.
Yeah. And you need to be writing and being able to argue on your feet. And you got 7 judges up there who know all the cases backwards and forwards that are going to be peppering questions at you, and you better be ready to answer them. Lally's not that guy. And I don't think, I thought maybe they're bringing Brennan on, maybe he's an appellate attorney, but once I started looking into him, he's not an appellate attorney. That is a very, very special skill. Thanks, I'm just a girl in the world. Yep. And no, they can't come up with new charges, AJ.
I mean, they could indict her for new charges, but I don't think that's realistic. But they can't just make
what?
Breathing oxygen while not suffering. I mean, that a lot of people I know would indict her for that.
Yeah, skirt's too short.
Or whatever it is. All kidding aside, I don't think there's any viable charges, but I'm sure they would if they could.
Yeah. Cindy, thanks for the five. The biggest problem is that Canoni allows objections whenever the defense gets close to making a pertinent point. Well, it's always Mr. Lally, do you have an objection? There was a lot of, in my opinion, there was a lot of help, right? Will Bev say, do you want to object, Mr. Brennan? Thanks.
No, that's the other thing. Again, I think this helps the defense because Brennan is going to know how to ask non-leading questions. He's going to know how to, I assume his trial skills are, with all due respect, at a higher level than Lally's. and the judge is going to recognize that. And when you're a judge and it's kind of more of an even keeled skill trial, you tend to lay back a little more and not do that. I also think it makes Alan and David more aggressive. You know, there's a risk of, if you just keep pounding Lally because he's doing things wrong, you don't want to piss off the jury. But
Right.
the jury is not going to look at Brennan as somebody who may need some help or is just kind of plodding his way through this. They're going to treat him as an equal and say, you know, you're up here in the big leagues, you need to hit major league pitching, right? So
Yeah.
the gloves come off and let's have a trial amongst skilled advocates. So I really think this is better for everyone on both sides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you think it's possible Brendan will say we're only trying on count 2?
Yes, if he has the power. And they go back to who has the power here. If this guy were to come in and say that this is a viable murder case based on a theory that, you know, Karen Reed got mad at John O'Keefe for what she believed was kissing a girl in Aruba. So naturally, a few weeks later, she waited for her opportunity after getting wasted before a blizzard and telling everyone, I'm coming to your house with him. That was my, you know, opportunity to just intentionally mow him down and leave him there. If this guy can't see that, I don't know, that's kind of a bad murder case, that would tell me a lot. So, but again, who has the power? I don't know.
Yeah, great point. Thank you, Maureen, for your super sticker, Maureen Gunn. Very nice of you. They'd indict her for being too pretty while in limbo. Yeah, it's you know, maybe a fresh set of eyes on this is what they really do need to really. But is everyone in Canton Irish? Thanks, Dennis the Menace. I don't know.
A fresh set of eyes is important, especially experienced ones like that are coming in. But not to beat a dead horse, but when you go back to the statement, it doesn't match exactly what Morrissey said. And he said, I'm going to be ready to try this case in January, which is code word for we're going forward.
Yeah, we're doing it.
But really, if Morrissey was being transparent and really brought in an outsider like a special prosecutor who had full control, you would expect a full reevaluation. And if they go forward, then he says, I reviewed everything. But if he's coming in now without even knowing, other than what he read in the media or saw on TV, that I'm prepared to retry it, well, that's a concern. That strikes me as a whitewash, and that this is just desperate times in that place.
And how about, like, how do you prep a case for trial until you know what's going to happen with this appeal? Because if 2 of the charges are going to get thrown out, you're not going to prep 3 charges for trial? It doesn't, you know, it doesn't work that way.
There's no way she's getting retried for murder. I mean, whether that comes from the higher court or even Canoni, if it's on a remand to her, or whether that comes from the DA. If this guy is involved and truly has influence, I can't fathom that there is any way that a real lawyer is going to say what we ought to do here is try her for murder, because that is such an overreach. And again, a real lawyer values his or her credibility.
Mm-hmm.
And if you retry her for murder based on this evidence, plus based on the fact that the whole world knows that she was acquitted, in fact, if not law, you'd have to have no credibility to pick a jury and say, I'm okay with this, knowing that they're all looking at you saying, dude, this lady got acquitted. What are you doing? Why are we doing this? How makes no sense.
Right, because when this case is over, he's going back to private practice. So he still has to, you know, have people hiring him as a private defense attorney. So
I mean, look, he's a good lawyer, he'll get hired, but yeah, this can be perilous, and it begs the question, why would he do this?
Yeah, I'm curious to see the retainer agreement. And if you're saying like it's public, then can't wait to see it. Well, I wonder what the hourly rate is. Gail, thanks so much for your super chat. I appreciate you. Glamasus says the feds pay special prosecutor fees in Massachusetts. Headed down your way in 30 minutes. I don't know. Maybe she means you. To Ben Salem to seize the gray run at the bar. I don't know what that means.
Definitely not in Pennsylvania, but
horse racing.
I don't know.
Thanks, Suze.
The feds pay special prosecutor fees. I don't think that's what he is. I mean, I don't know like the Massachusetts ins and outs of how this works, but I don't know if he's officially designated a special prosecutor such that the feds would pay it. But either way, they get grants from the feds and they're just wasting money out of the grant. Either way, taxpayers, whether it's federal tax money, state tax money, county tax money, you, the taxpayers, are paying more because the Norfolk DA's office is in essence saying we're not capable of trying a retrial of what amounts to an allegation of a hit and run.
Right. It's not a complex case that requires any sort of special skills.
No,
Or
the
special
special
knowledge
skill
in
that
lawyering.
require
Right.
a thin skin because of all the crazy public stuff that goes on. It is kind of a wacky case with a lot going on, but at its core, you know, the prosecution theory is that she quote unquote admitted hitting him to any number of these people,
Right.
whether it be the firefighter, McCabe, or whoever. And they believe that they did a good search, that the CERT team found some of the taillight, and that the rest of the taillight just revealed itself a couple of weeks later, and she was wasted. That's their case. It's not that complicated.
No,
Now-
it's not. It's not anything that would need a special.
No.
Carly, can we talk about how there were no evidentiary pretrial hearings in the Karen Reed case? That's wild, right?
I don't understand how there were not issues over the phone that the cops seemingly just took and searched and went through, presumably without a warrant. I don't know, excuse me, what the probable cause was. I don't think she consented to any of this. I don't know. Again, I got involved in this or interested in it a little late. I regret not seeing this in the pretrial stage because I think it would have been for lawyers that much more grotesque.
Oh, I have a whole playlist. You can. I went through all the pretrial motions, all the motions in limine, all the hearings.
The one thing I saw pretrial, which I would have to think that Mr. Brennan would agree was ridiculous, was when they did go back to court after they got the federal disclosures, and the defense said that this is loaded with exculpatory material. And I don't remember if it was Lally or his
Miss McLaughlin.
Sometimes-
Miss McLaughlin.
his sometimes partner. I don't remember, but one of them said, we've reviewed this and
Sir.
there's virtually no exculpatory evidence in there. And I'm thinking now with the benefit of hindsight. So when the expert nerds say that in our expert opinion, we don't believe that the DA's theory could have caused the damage to the car or the injuries to John O'Keefe, that's about as exculpatory as it gets. I mean, that there's like Brady material, and then there's blow the roof off Brady. That's blow the roof off. And of course, that also covers impeachment material. So, you know, I'm kind of thinking that if that's when they learned about all these text messages from Proctor, that's slightly impeaching, such to the point that the DA's office disclosed what they were compelled to disclose literally right after the trial. So that's another thing that would make me wonder, is Mr. Brennan concerned with their view and understanding of what Brady and Giglio, which is impeachment material, is? I mean, if that's their view and they say that's not exculpatory, that calls into question everything. I mean, they recently, I don't want to beat this to death, but they recently sent an updated letter about Proctor where they said we have his phone. And they basically said, we're considering hiring an outside contractor. Now, do they mean Brennan? Is that what they meant?
Oh.
I talked about this a week or two ago and said, my God, if this DA's office submitted a letter saying we're going to bring in an independent contractor to help determine what's Brady, then they should close the DA's office down if you people are not capable of looking at evidence and saying, I need to disclose this, not that. But now looking at it differently, it might have been just cute language, you know, where they said we're going to have looking to outsource this to an independent, that they could have meant Brennan.
That's interesting. Yeah, like a taint team. That's interesting. LA, thanks for the 10. In my opinion, 2 reasons. Commonwealth didn't 100% lose. The jurors didn't understand reasonable doubt. Made up theory not brought by Commonwealth should have equals reasonable doubt. Lally extended the trial so long was so boring that the jurors didn't retain important information.
The more this has gone on and people talk about this and like Lally extending the trial, and I get it, but you ought to be able in most cases to sum up in like 30 minutes. Giving them an hour on this record with no readback and no transcripts, looking back on it is just, and I'm not saying that these lawyers want to, good lawyers generally don't want to go too long, but the problem in this case was you have to point out so many things because they're not going to remember because Lally extended the trial so long and it takes a lot of time. And there are things that I'm sure they wanted to point out that they couldn't get to. And then they just get lost, because no
9 weeks of testimony in 1 hour, and to also have to explain to them those really confusing jury verdict slips. Like
the Trump case in New York was close to the same length, a little shorter, and a hell of a lot more boring. Obviously, I mean the material was, except for the Stormy Daniels nonsense, was very boring. They gave the lawyers in that case 4 to 5 hours to sum up. Now that's too long. But the point is, the judge was like, I'm not going to cut you off on a case that's been on for this long, this dense. If you think you need that much time, I'm not going to tell you no. To tell these guys, I'm giving you an hour for a case like this, where there were so many other things, that was a huge disadvantage.
I agree. Even 90 minutes would have been better. Cat Lady, can Levy hold a presser announcing that Karen's innocent without moving in with indictments since the TUI wasn't enough?
Feds don't talk unless they're doing something. They don't give people clean bills of health. They don't come out and say, we investigated this person, but we didn't find anything. They do what they did with Farwell, which is drag him in handcuffs and unseal indictments and do that. The only way that they would ever even give the implication that she's innocent is if they indict people for their conduct in framing her or issues related to this case. And then it becomes obvious that, they wouldn't do that if they thought that she killed a man. But they're never going to come out and say she's an innocent person. The feds don't talk in this way. They just don't, which means they're hard to predict. You don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that Farwell thing didn't leak at all. I mean, we were all surprised by that, I think. I can speak for all of us when I say that. Anita, is it procedurally possible and or likely for the defendant to subpoena Lally as a witness in challenging veracity of the inverted video? Yeah, we just talked about that, I think.
Yeah, well, we talked about this months ago, where one of the things I said at a retrial would be an advantage. I would assume that what the defense is going to do is start slinging subpoenas, motions, and get to the bottom of the inverted taillight and demand even potentially a hearing on it. Taillight, the inverted video.
Yeah. I know.
And if they get enough, then they can make an argument that he's a witness, which the DA will fight against, but, spent some time recently researching this issue and something else. And there, everybody knows the witness advocate rule. A lawyer involved in a matter, with certain exceptions that would not apply here, can't at the same time be a witness. I mean, you just can't give sworn or the risk of giving unsworn testimony and arguing and doing other things if you're giving sworn testimony as a fact witness. And if Lally, I'm not saying he was, I don't know, but if he did something or was involved in concealing that video and all of that, then absolutely they can make him a witness.
Or if he suborned perjury by questioning Buchanan about it when he knew and had every reason to know that it was not a fair and accurate representation of what it purported to be.
And I would expect, and this is another reason why Lally's potentially a witness. I mean, Buchanan got cross-examined about this, at the trial, obviously, but it was a very fluid thing. It was just happening over the course of a couple of days. They just got the video. Nobody knew about it, and they didn't have a chance to really digest it. Well, now they are going to have a transcript of the testimony about what he said on direct and what he said on cross. And I would imagine that they're going to come after him like a ton of bricks on this. And they're going to ask some other difficult questions, which is, when did you first see it? Who showed it to you? How did you become aware of it? What role did this guy, meaning Lally? I mean, again, this is how you make him a witness. And if he was, I'm not saying he was, but if he was, well, that's a problem. If he was, if an attorney, I mean, look, they had him testify that was a fair and accurate depiction of the events in the Sally Port. That is unequivocally false. That's not true. And not only was it not true, but it just happened to conveniently take the relevant taillight out of view for every single person except one who, you know, got gleeful on his own show about, look, there's the taillight. Other than that guy, it flipped the taillight out of view, and it flipped a very important person vis-a-vis the taillight, Michael Proctor, out of view as well. That's a hell of a coincidence. That is a remarkable coincidence, and one they ought to answer for.
Yeah, 100%. I'm surprised there wasn't like a motion about it or something wasn't addressed during the trial. It wasn't movement to be stricken. I don't know.
That is a Saul Goodman bobblehead, and it's also a Lawyer Up mug, which was his license plate when he went full Breaking Bad. Saul Goodman, yes.
Oh, like Better Call Saul?
Yeah.
Better Call Saul? I watched some of that case. That show. I didn't really watch it. Can we do a show on the Puff Daddy circus? Well, I don't know when Mark's going to have time to read that, but
need more than one for that. There's a lot of people in New York who are shaking their. No. I mean, I was in the Manhattan DA's office at the time when he got arrested with Jennifer Lopez, where he was accused of firing a gun in a club. And he kind of used that other wannabe rapper at the time as his patsy.
He did 10 years.
And Lopez was in the car, and she ended up getting arrested, and the DA's office eventually let it go. And I mean, a lot of people back then were like, man, that guy, you know, he put it on this guy. He appeared to be at least willing. I mean, there was a week or so period where Jennifer Lopez was in it, you know.
Right.
I saw her at the DA's office. That was kind of a big celebrity sighting back in 1999 or 2001, whatever the hell it was. But, you know, she was in trouble for a period of time for just him being the boyfriend. And a lot of people feel that he got away with it and just pinned it on this guy. I think his name was Jamal Barrow. They called him Shine, if I recall.
He did 10 years. He did 10 years. And did he end up paying him $1 million for his troubles?
Well, you know, that's.
You know, conspiracy. I mean, since we are conspiracy theory grifters, I'm just going to toss this out to you. A lot of people are theorizing or, you know, hypothesizing that perhaps this new J-Lo, Ben Affleck split, their divorce, has to do with something like they may be looking at her for something as such to do with the P. Diddy thing. And therefore, who knows? There's a lot, Mark, there's a lot of famous people involved in this.
No
Mark,
doubt.
Comment for later.
But, and again, if I'm conflating years, you know, that trial, I believe, was in 2001. It was right before 9/11, actually, I think.
Oh,
everything in New York is like before. That's how you acclimate time, before or after.
Right, of course.
It just is. But didn't they break up like in 2002 or 3 or around that time? Most of these allegations involving him now are way after that. I mean, obviously we don't know, but I doubt she's mixed up in any of that stuff.
Oh no, he was having these white parties out in the Hamptons all the way back then. I mean, all these freak parties or whatever they're calling them. This was all going on around.
I don't think she was
the early aughts. The early aughts. Yeah, but what if she helped cover up the lie about the thing, about the shoot? I don't know. That's what people are saying. If they're conspiracy theorists.
I hope not. I mean, I kind of like her, so I hope not.
Oh, you do? You're a J-Lo stan? Look at that. We're learning something new about you.
You know, she got mixed up in that thing. I think even back then, people are like, God, you know, why are they putting the weight on her? You know, it's the gun in the car. There's a presumption in New York. You can arrest everyone. And most times, you know, the honorable person will, you know, own the gun and save the innocent. And
she
didn't work that way for her.
She carried the gun in her purse.
Carried it or was told to or had it placed there. I mean, it's all potentially semantics. We don't know. But she never got charged.
What about Quentin Tarantino?
Oh, that was the best for me anyway. Celebrity sighting in the DA's office when I worked there because I'm
Oh,
a
that's
Pulp
cool.
Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, Jackie Brown, all that stuff, and yeah, he was down there one day for his own business at the time, and that was. I won't bore you with the whole story, but he walked by a poster of Pulp Fiction and kind of did a 3-second kind of took a look and kept walking on, and it was a long time ago, yeah, but it was cool.
That is so cool.
I was supposed to be a fanboy. That was a fanboy moment.
Yeah, my fangirl moment was with Brad Pitt, because I have twins, and when my twins were 2 years old, Brad Pitt and Angelina moved to Long Island because she was filming a movie here, and they sent all of their kids to the same private school that my twins were at, and my
Nice.
twins were in class with Shiloh in like this little preschool, and Brad would drive the kids to school every day, and one day, he was there and we played blocks together with our kids, and it was cool. But you know what they say about like don't ever meet your heroes, because he just was so different than I thought he would be. Not a tall man. He had like a Southern accent. He was very sweet though. He walked me in my car, and we had some things in common because my sister did a Heineken campaign that he had been involved in, so I had some talking points for him, because you want to have some talking points when you're all nervous
just
meeting a celebrity. But it was
Right.
Brad Pitt. It was pretty cool.
What happens on Long Island stays on Long Island.
Yeah, true. It was fun. What else do we have? Anything? I told you we wouldn't keep you long because I know you have another appearance tonight. And so if you have anything else you'd like to say to the people,
No,
thanks for having people. Thanks for coming.
Anytime.
Were there any other topics that broke? I think this is good. Hour and 20. We kept it.
No, I think, look, the big one to me is bringing in a ringer again. It is
I'll give you full screen.
shocking.
Oh, wait, I said it.
Oh, now you're gone. What happened?
I'm going to give you the full screen for your final thoughts, and then I'll come back.
Nah, you don't have to do it. Bringing in a ringer like that is just shocking. If they recuse themselves, you might understand it, but to stick around and say we need outside help, and we need outside help from, again, these are not my words, but the public perception, a mob lawyer who has made a history of attacking the integrity of investigations, which is absolutely his right, by the way. That doesn't offend me in the least bit. Attacking witnesses that have been police officers that he's accused of lying, attacking federal prosecutors for lacking integrity. Maybe that's why Morrissey likes him. I don't know. But the fact that that's the person that the public is going to see is not offended allegedly by that, but who's going to, go after Karen Reed, this awful murderess, that this is a problem. It's not a great look, and it reeks of desperation. And I think politically he's already lost, because now he's demonstrated incredible weakness and a lack of confidence and panic. No one in your office can or will do this.
It's if it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck.
I just hope somebody in the media will ask, and it's a very fair question, why should the taxpayers, we fund your office of 50 lawyers or whatever, why does it have to be 51 for what is in essence a hit and run homicide? Allegedly.
Yeah, not a complex case. Thank you, Sherilyn, for your Cash App, and Justin Green for your Cash App, and to all of the people that have been with me all day and who decided to stick with me and come see Mark tonight. And thank you for the matcha latte, and KPT for the 5 matcha lattes. I'm going to need all the caffeine for tomorrow. So thanks. Oh, wait, one more. Hold on, one more. Attorney Bederow, thanks for your Columboisms, watching now and can see into a young Bederow's mind for the small details.
Lady in Waiting, a great episode. Leslie Nielsen is one of the people in that episode. I remember this. She ends up, the woman murders her brother because he's kind of like running their business and runs her personal life, and didn't want him dating the company lawyer, who was Leslie Nielsen. And she tries to make it sound like it was an accident. I thought he set the burglar alarm off, so I I shot him when he came in, and they did a coroner's inquest, like a total California thing, right? The coroner's inquest.
Right.
And there was Columbo sitting in the audience watching, and the jury determined that it was an accident. But of course, Columbo, it's never enough, right? So eventually,
No.
he ends up arresting her. And it was one of these rare episodes at the end, actually, where the murderess in that TV show looks like she had about 3 seconds of thought she wanted to shoot Columbo. And he, calmly said, "You're much classier than that." And she put the gun down and put her scarf over herself and gracefully walked to be arrested.
Thanks, man.
I could go old Columbo for hours, not the new stuff. That's garbage. But
Maybe that's your niche. Maybe that's what you should, when you start your YouTube channel, you could talk about Columbo episodes.
I could talk about Columbo and James Bond for hours.
I could talk about Seinfeld all day. Good citizen, what did you think of the standout? Were the people heard?
It's in the news. There was a lot of people there yesterday. I mean, it's in front of the State House. Are they heard? Yeah. Are they listened to? I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a different thing, but did anybody come out of the State House? Probably not. It's in the news. It keeps up the attention. What does it really do? I don't know. I mean, I don't know how. What's amazing is they just keep doing it. I mean, the wherewithal and spirit that these people have to just keep going and going and going is, I mean, that's amazing. And that's, I'm sure the battery charging that does for the, defense team, including the client, would be, it helps because it gets tiring and there are highs and lows, and to see that level of support is, I would think, amazing and very charging the battery. Let's go to war. And
We ain't got no quit.
as that's what they say. Yeah.
Right? We ain't got no quit. Where is, hold on one second. Couple of pictures here. I can find them.
There was a lot of people there.
There was well over 150 people there, I believe.
And they were, supporting some other recent stuff going on. You saw with this horrible thing with the
Oh my God, Enrique Delgado Garcia. Horrifying.
and Sandra Birchmore.
Sandra Birchmore. I see some signs here for Sandra Birchmore.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is that
So
dressed as a minion? think that's a guy.
no, it's just a yellow poncho. Whoa. Oh,
No,
here,
no,
yeah, it
right.
looks like he's got a minion.
Those look like minion eyes.
I don't know what that's all about.
Okay.
But yeah, so yeah, well over 150 people there.
That's a good picture of the oh, there you go. Okay.
That's a great turnout. It's a great turnout.
Yes.
So keep on
And
keeping on, you guys. Keep
Crappy
on
weather.
fighting the good fight. You
Yeah.
know, the more press, I guess, the better for all of these horrific cases. Karen Reed, Sandra Birchmore, Enrique Delgado Garcia. I'd like to see some answers come in on that soon. But who knows
Yeah.
about that? I've done a
That's-
couple shows on it already, and I'm waiting for some more information because they need to get to the bottom of that toot sweet.
Well, you need an investigation, which appears to be just kind of in quicksand, which is very unfortunate.
Right, because the DA, Joe Early, is going to give it to somebody, but he hasn't decided who yet. I mean, how many choices are there?
It ought to be fed.
Feds.
Yeah, no, it's look, I know they retain counsel, so hopefully at least they're no longer getting exploited. I mean, that dragging them out to that press conference, they don't even speak English from what I was told.
No.
They weren't told the purpose of why they're being there, and they're there to just be,
Disgrace.
a form of eye candy, I assume, to avoid criticism and make this impression that we're all on the same page. And maybe they are, maybe they're not, but that struck me as very underhanded and unfortunate.
Yeah, I can't wait for that 8-minute video to surface of that boxing incident. I'm waiting for that.
It's a lot. Those injuries don't appear to be from boxing, and if they are, it appears to be, the equivalent of a 10-year-old fighting Mike Tyson in his prime. So something is off either way here.
Horrible. It's horrible. All right, I'm going to let you go. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much, my moderators. Thank you. You guys are amazing. You're going to be on Young Jerks tonight at
7. Yeah. Quick bite to eat, and then
7 o'clock. All right. I'm going to let you go.
Go
So
back.
thank you everyone for coming and hanging out with me all day. And, like we say, be cool, be kind, be classy. Mods, I love you. You guys are amazing. Smash that like button on your way out for Mark and for me. And, do all the YouTubers things like share it, like it, subscribe to it, all that good stuff. And I'll see you guys real soon.
see ya.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.